Good morning, everybody. It's Marty, the JavaScript party, and I got my buddy Rhett there. The sun is starting to come through, so it's going to be a little annoying for a few minutes, but it does help my health a lot. And you know, actually getting to see me is probably not as big, but I guess, and actually, no one has ever said they enjoy seeing Rhett. So, but Rhett enjoys doing this. I did make her a I cracked her a walnut, and when I was cracking it today, we have a nut cracker, and I noticed there's some extra knobs on there, and I've noticed that with those extra knobs, you can actually puncture the shell, and then you can go back down, and it's much easier to crack it, and you have a lot more control of how you crack it. And it was like that was a feature I just did not know about. I did not know what those little knobs at the because there's some sort of knobs at the front of it and sort of knobs at the back of it. I think the knobs at the front of it are for smaller nuts, and the knobs at the back, but it's to do the initial crack, and then it's got like teeth in the middle, and then you can crack the whole thing. And it does show that like we have all these things and there's features and we don't know what they are. It's just sort of the way life is. Um, so I've been around net crackers my whole life, but that was the first time I ever noticed that. But here it is, and so I think I did a good job because like the bottom half is still there, but the top half is off. So give her nut. You want that? There you go. There you go. Yeah, yeah. Anyway, so I started coding when I was 10 years old. So before puberty, right? I am 57 years old now. So I was introduced to flow control, so if then type things uh, in, you know, before my brain like had formed really in any adult sort of way. I was a child, a small child. I probably weighed about 70 pounds, 80 pounds. I was very small, a very, very small um, person. I was like 5 feet 6 inches, which is not a very tall. I think the average height in America is about 5'8", 5 feet 8 inches. So it wasn't very tall when I was 25, and by the time I was 30, I'm about 5'9" now. So I'm a little bit taller than average. So so I was just this tiny little, very prepubescent person when I learned about stuff. But today, the if thens and all that are branches, and functions did not exist. The concept of I don't believe the concept of a function in a non-academic way existed in 1978. Or if it did, it may have, but it was in very, very advanced languages that very, very few people ever did. So like the function just didn't exist. The branches did. I think most people who have taught people who then have taught people are like me, where we learned branches first and then we learned functions. And unit testing has kind of put me in a mindset where like I'm questioning that those initial learn things that I learned as a very, very small child, um, that are like, man, I think that might have been the wrong direction, but it was the only direction. So it was just kind of like when I was a kid, I lived next to Route 66, which was also next to either I-40 or I-4. I can never remember. I think it's I-40 because it was in New Mexico, and so I lived in this little town where there was an old highway, which was just a two-lane highway, which is very famous. It's called Route 66, and then right next to it is a big superhighway, which was like 8 lanes, beautiful highway called Interstate 40. And I think branches, for the most part, are like Route 66, and functions are like Interstate 40. And the reason is because we used to make these Dungeons and Dragons games, which was like command line games, where we'd be like, if you go to door 1, 2, or 3, blah 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 blah. And the thing is like we couldn't really go much beyond that because like let's say we would have loved to have said, oh, what kind of door is it? Oh, is there a magic spell on it? Oh, is there this? Is that there that? But that's very difficult to do with flow control or branching. But it's not very hard to sort of take a function get door, and then inside of get door say if get magic and get this and get that and get that. It's like you can expand and you can grow a lot easier with functions than you can with branches. That is a very novel thought for me. Like literally while I was taking my shower this morning, that sort of started to crystallize for me that like you really are penning yourself in. You are really limiting your future by using branches instead of functions to do things. Now branches like might be maybe like if you're just trying to get a Boolean back true or false, maybe a branch in there might work or whatever. But every time you do that, you should think, I think from here on out, from this morning my shower, for the rest of my life, I think I'll be like, anytime I'm trying to think of, if I'm thinking about creating a branch, I'm going to think to myself, is this something that I might want to expand in the future? If it is, then I'm just going to make a function that returns whatever I was going to branch based on, not that. And I want it to be a pure function because it's just so much easier to reason about. Like you don't have to consider, oh, what else might have been changing something somewhere for whatever reason. It's just like, hey, this is a pure function. This is how it works. All that. But anyways, we are all green now. We are 98.64% of statements. So we have 515 statements that all but 7 are covered. We have 67 branches and all but 4 are covered. And we have 138 functions and all but 1 are covered. And then in all of our files, we have this stuff. And it is actually kind of interesting. I never really thought about it, but it's very easy to see where all your code is by looking at this. So in our statements, see, this one has 141 lines of code. All the rest of them, the next closest one after that, I believe is 33 lines. No, animations has 62 lines. So that's interesting to think about. But anyway, so I'm going to click into visualizations. I'm going to click into here. I don't even really remember what we're doing. Up until a couple days ago, I would watch my videos, my previous video to kind of come up to speed. But I think I'm going to try to just remember it. I think it's good for my brain to try to remember where I was yesterday. My days are so full, so many things going on. I'm so blessed to have so many things going on in my life. And my days are so full that literally yesterday's video feels like a million years ago. Or at least feels like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, because there was just so many things that happened between today and yesterday at this time. And I have a nice full day ahead of me today. And I think that's what you want out of life. You want to have a nice full day. So it looks like we pulled a bunch of code out yesterday, and it looks like we got this, if I remember correctly, we got this get row of build for potential siblings done. And now we have this function, which takes, I think we even did this yesterday. We changed this from going like this, get whatever, to taking a list of visualizations and operating on that list that it gets handed. So I believe this is probably exactly how we want to go about doing this. I know that I like to kind of make this kind of stuff its own function. And I guess that would be a lot easier to do if I didn't have the noise of all this extra sort of code around. So let's go ahead and get rid of that. And let's just sort of contemplate the idea of it looks like we don't want that step 3. Okay. I guess we could create a function like isSelf. Like, how hard would it be? Does it make sense? I guess this is my very first time of doing this new idea. that I have. It's like ignore self. Would this ever, do I need to add any sort of future growth um, in um, in determining if something is itself? And I don't think so. Um, it is interesting that I use the renderer ID to determine if I'm myself because the viz has its own ID as well. Um, and I guess it is interesting to kind of think through that. Like, yes, no, I think a renderer has to be unique. I do not think two, yes, two visualizations cannot share the same renderer ID. And the reason is it should, like if you think about it, it should. There, from a philosophical and a logical perspective, there should be no reason why two visualizations should be able to share the same renderer ID. But there is, and that's because a part of a renderer is the DOM element that it's attached to, and they can't. Every visualization should have its own DOM element. We if we're having a visualization, we I do want to be able to be like, I'm looking at this exact same one over here, but I'm looking at it from a different angle. I want that, but I can't have them have the same renderer ID because they both share the same DOM element that they're part of. So that makes it. And since we figured that out just now, I'm just going to say two renderers can't, or two visualizations can't share a renderer because a renderer has a DOM element. Hopefully that makes sense. That probably won't make sense to me in the future. So they would show in the same place. Both viz would show in the same place. Which I guess, like, maybe you might, I don't even know. You probably can't even, like, ThreeJS probably wouldn't even let you do it. But there are, I guess I could think of some sort of crazy thing where maybe I have an animation and I have two visualizations and it swaps back and forth between visualizations inside the same DOM element. I would probably want to have that effect more like two visualizations in the same spot, but one being on top of the other based on time or something like that. So I don't think this should be its own function because I don't think we want to grow this. Like, is self would be kind of cool, and then say if is self or something like that. But anyways, so do I want to move these sort of 4 lines of code into another function that accepts, like, that is bound? And I don't even think, oh yeah, okay, so it needs to be bound because it needs this. It needs to be able to get to these functions. And I guess just for practice, because I do have to bind stuff once in a while at work. I don't really like doing it because, you know, it is kind of hard for a lot of people to understand. But I do need the practice. So I'm going to say, I'm going to create a function called get available. Or is available? Is available? That's probably a good name. Is available. Is available. So this is a function that I'm going to just pass to this visualization. Fortunately, I don't think it needs to know anything. Yeah, it doesn't need to know this. Hey, buddy. And I probably just will need to change the order and call this and set it. There would be no reason to set it up there. Um, so it doesn't need to know this. It does need to know the viewport width. Yeah. So it does need to know something in here. So that means that we have to create a function that is based on the viewport width. So we need a function that returns the viewport width. I mean, that returns available, but it knows what the viewport width is. So that means we have to create a factory function. And I can't remember what the word for it was, but it was like a something predicate factory, I think it was called. So we need to create a predicate. I love you too. We need to create a predicate factory function that returns a value and knows what the viewport width is. So let's just say available. Yeah. Function. I don't know if that's a good name. We probably won't stick with that name. And it will accept you. So this will be the first time I've ever tried to do one of these without the help of ChatGPT. And it's going to take the viewport width. I love you too. And that's going to be a number. And it's going to return a function that accepts a visualization. I think this is right. I might be doing this wrong. Okay, I'm going to try to put this on another line. Let me do this. Okay, just for now, I'm just going to say Boolean just so that I can write this out a little bit better. But it's actually returning a function, not a... I don't want the distraction. All right. So I think I could put this on another line. And then I can move this to another line. And then we're not returning a Boolean. We're returning a function. And it's a function, and I believe we put what it accepts in this one, which it accepts a viz. And yeah, a viz, which is an ST visualization. It returns an index. I mean, it accepts an index, which is a number. Good girl. You are a good girl. You are a good girl, Rhett. Yes, you are. I love you too. Current viz list, which is an array of ST visualizations. And then I don't know. I felt so confident. Oh, okay. And then that. Let's see. I think I do this someplace else, right? I think, do I call them factories other places? Yes, availability. Oh no, that's just this one. Ugh. Okay, so I do them in for loops, right? So let's try to find another for each. For each. Is row sibling return. Okay, so this is how that looks, and I'm trying to figure out what this last. Oh, okay. And it's what it returns, which is a Boolean. Okay. So in plain American English, this is a it's a this I'm telling it that this is a function. It's going to return a function. So that makes it a higher order function. It's a function that returns a function, and the function it returns is going to accept a visualization, a number, and a list. Ready? No, I'm not ready. Are you ready? Am I getting close on time? It's 8:45. Okay, so now, basically, this function is basically this code. But it does this. And if I remember correctly, it's important, and I don't know exactly why. Availability equals false. Available. And then we return available. No, I'm not doing that right. Okay, so we return a function. And that has these arguments. And this needs to be an arrow. And then true. I'm just sort of having, okay, so it's happy with that. So basically what we want to do is we want to copy this. And then we want to say, see, it's, oh. Okay, is it current viz? Oh no, it needs to know current viz as well. Ah, so this actually takes two things. It also takes the current viz. Current viz, which is an ST visualization. So I apologize if this is sort of like kind of not very smooth, but I am trying to learn how to do this. Equals true. So by default, if I remember correctly, it needs to be true, and it only becomes false inside these functions. Return available. Okay, and it's upset about one thing, and that's current row. Okay, so it also needs the current row. And this is very difficult to read after the fact. Like while we were doing it, it wasn't bad. But once you kind of come back and read it, and this thing doesn't even use the viewport width. Oh, it does. But for some reason, they're spelled different. Okay. It's weird. Why? Is there different in the case? Oh, it's capital P here and lowercase p up there. I think viewport is a single word. Okay. I think that does what we want. And so then we want to mint out this function. We want a version of this function. So it's like const availability this dot availability factory function. And it wants three things. It wants the viewport width. It wants the current viz, and it wants the visualization list, I think. I can't even remember. ST current viz list. Okay, I know that gets passed in. Oh, okay, I just call it visualizations up here. Visualizations. Yep. Why are you not? Why do you have a problem with this? So it says is not assignable to a number. Oh, what is this? Okay, so I'm trying to call this factory. The first one is the viewport width. The second one is the current visualization. Oh, okay, the current row, not visualizations. Yeah, that's right, current row. All right. So what we are doing is we're minting out a version. We're creating a function that accepts three things, and then it returns a function that knows those three things, and that function should then, I should be able to pass that to this, but I believe I will have to do a bind operation on it. I guess operation is the right word. I actually want to get that vocabulary right, and I just want to make sure like nothing breaks, because I'm going to have to log off here in a second. Okay, so everything's still working. It was able to compile. We have some new stuff in here. I don't know if they're tested yet. So availability factory function is not ever executed, and then this function inside of it is never executed. And then we aren't using it yet. So we've probably lost some ground, I would imagine. Yeah, see, we're back into the B range on this. Probably most importantly, I really wanted to get this higher order functions, creating higher order functions in order to use them and all that. I wanted to get that into, sort of move it out of the, hey, I know it exists, so I know how to look it up. And I move it more into, okay, this is formal understanding knowledge that I know how to do, and I can code it without looking it up. It's not like you need to always be able to code everything that without looking it up, but it does feel better. So the question is, I wanted to know if what bind is. So I'm going to say ChatGPT. Man, so I had to do some work for my wife last night, and ChatGPT, like I knew everything I wanted to do, but I didn't know exactly how to do it. But I had a really good feeling on the way to do it, and ChatGPT, literally what took would have been like a 3-hour job and made it into like a 20-minute job. And I actually coded it better than I would have without ChatGPT. So in JavaScript, there is something called a bind. What is that? A operation? Is a method available on functions, create new functions specific. So without bind, okay, so technical terms, bind is a function on the prototype, it returns a function with this context. So how would I use bind? sentence. So like now I want to perform a bind question mark question this I need to perform a bind on this method to make sure it keeps the right this context with when it's passed. Since this function loses context inside the event lister, I'll bind it in the constructor. Oh, that's a good way of putting it. You can bind this to the handler so it still refers to the class instance. Oh, I love that one. Let me just bind that method to the object so we don't run into any undefined this errors. We can use bind here to particularly. So we can use the bind function here to partially apply the first argument to fix the context. Yeah, now I want to perform a bind on this function before passing it to the event. Yeah, so I like that a lot. Anyways, it is 8:55. I got to go. Happy coding, everybody. Bye.